Watch today's episode of Clicks and Bricks to learn how Kevin from US Cryotherapy finds faith in knowing his numbers. Welcome back, everybody, to Clicks and Bricks. My name is Ken. Today we have Kevin with US Cryotherapy. I'm super excited about this episode because cryotherapy is a treatment that I started using about 3 years ago, and it has helped me in tremendous ways. So we're going to go a little bit off script from a normal Clicks and Bricks episode. We're going to talk a little bit about the technology of cryotherapy today, which should be a whole lot of fun. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great, Ken. Thanks. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today on the show. We really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and coming on the show to help our listeners understand your industry a little better is very much appreciated. So thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. And can you tell us a little bit about what US Cryotherapy does, like at a 10,000 foot view?
Yeah, so in 2011, we founded the cryotherapy industry by opening the first retail treatment center in the U.S., and we've expanded that now to 23 locations via corporate and franchise-owned centers. And we also sell our equipment to professional sports teams and independent med spas and country clubs, etc. We're sort of the the go-to as it relates to electric walk-in refrigerated whole body cryotherapy. Founders of, from an educational standpoint, sort of the industry as it relates to cooling the body to stimulate a central nervous system response for a physiological benefit, which leads to better health and recovery.
Fantastic. So when you say you founded the industry in the U.S., is that something you licensed from Europe, or is this something you found in another country and said, hey, that's a great idea, started researching it and brought it to the U.S. on your own? Or did you have some kind of partner in that?
Yeah, we didn't license it. My dad was the founder. He's since passed away, but brought the idea back after experiencing a cryotherapy center in Prague on vacation, and really got interested in it. And we found a manufacturer of equipment in Germany at that time, and got together with my three brothers and my dad and said, hey, let's put a business plan together and start the industry here in the U.S. There are no treatment centers. And so we did that, and that was the beginning or the genesis of whole body cryotherapy in the United States and the beginning of our brand, US Cryotherapy.
Fantastic. So, and we talked a little bit about the show before. I'm pretty familiar with cryotherapy, and I'm used to you called them saunas earlier, where you walk in and your head's sticking out of them and they dump the nitrous oxide in there, and it drops the body temperature for 3 minutes. And I think, I've gone as low as negative 270 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I keep it about 150, somewhere in there when I go. Can you describe the difference to the audience between the sauna and the chamber?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of studies out of Europe. And so my background was all in clinical and product development in big pharma for 23 years. I took the clinical side of the development of our business and then later moved over to become the CEO. The clinical studies show that, cooling whole body, dropping skin temperature from head to toe, and most importantly, in the upper quadrant of the body, is important to activate the central nervous system. And so from a safety standpoint and from a cost of use standpoint and from a true desire to not use liquid nitrogen or expose anybody to gas, we chose the whole body walk-in electric chambers. And so now the studies that are coming out are looking at WBC, whole body cryotherapy, which would be in a walk-in environment, and comparing that to what they call PBC, or partial body cooling, in something that's derived using liquid nitrogen. So cooling in a forced air situation like what you've experienced, they actually inject the nitrogen vapor from the bottom of the system and then try to cool as that rises up the body. Very different from our systems, where you can walk in as an individual or multiple people at a time into an ambient room that immediately starts to drop skin temperature from head to toe.
But that's electric cooled. So if I'm a business person and I'm thinking about opening a cryotherapy unit, right, or a cryo center, or I'm a gym, we have a lot of gyms and dance studios that watch the show.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add this as an amenity to my current facility. Can you talk a little bit about the economics of running? I mean, I think everybody knows the danger of having nitrous tanks inside their building, right? And if they don't, we don't need to educate them on those dangers. They can Google that. But economically, what's the difference between running a nitrogen sauna and an electric chamber?
Yeah, at the outset, there's a cost advantage to a cheaper, smaller piece of equipment like a nitrogen cooled product. And that's probably, a third of the cost of what an electric walk-in chamber would run. But in reality, as you look at that down the road, you're paying $8, roughly $6 to $8 per treatment in the cost of nitrogen to cool the body. So you have a lot lower profitability as it relates to, per treatment. And it's a much lower capacity. You might be able to do, 7 to 8 treatments an hour in a nitrogen product, whereas the electric refrigerated systems have the capacity to fit, 2 to 5 people per session, right? So if you start looking at processing people and cooling them effectively, from an economic standpoint, the electric chambers are far more profitable. There's a big movement right now because it was an unregulated space and still is for the most part. There was just an intrusion of all of the other equipment from, Europe. And these are, there's probably 8 to 10 manufacturers of the nitrogen saunas that you've experienced. And They popped up everywhere after we started the industry here. So that's been the biggest challenge, is just educating people about the safety, the clinical, and the cost, and operating cost, and the ability to do high volume or capacity in an electric versus a nitrogen unit. The market is finally starting to, now that there's awareness, move much more significantly in the direction of the walk-in systems.
Fantastic. So, and just a little bit there, what he's talking about is the difference between an operational expense and a capital expense. The saunas that you have today, they run about 30 grand. You can buy them. They're fairly affordable. You finance it over years, and you're paying a much higher operational expense, which is long-term going to hurt your business a lot more. So go ahead and take the capital expense, get that out of the way, and then really work on lowering your operational expenses. Operational expenses are what kill businesses most of the time, right? They think, I can spread this out over a long period of time and it'll be okay. Yeah. But those margins, $8 versus a couple cents is a wild operational expense difference.
Yeah, let me just frame up a simple mathematical sort of example for you. So if you lease a $100,000 piece of equipment over 10 years, you might pay $1,500 a month for that piece of equipment. And if your operating expense on that piece of equipment is next to nothing, right? It's fixed, it's electrical, you might be running $400 a month on that. So let's call it $2,000 a month, right? Okay, so then if you're doing 30 treatments a day in a nitrogen unit that maybe costs you 30 grand, you're still spending $2,400 a month in nitrogen just to break even.
Right.
So the reality of that is you want to be doing more than 30 treatments a day and creating profitability. You lose profit margin, everywhere between 20 treatments and up in a nitrogen product, whereas you have 100% profitability in an electric chamber in that situation.
Right. So working in a data center, I'm very, very, very familiar with power consumption and the difference between a capital expense and an operational expense. And operational expenses when it comes to electric use or those one-time, the disposable items that you have, and electricity is a disposable item. You take it in, you never get to use it again. Can destroy you if you don't really, really watch it. So now I do have another question. We didn't go over this. When I go in my cryotherapy, I'm darn near nude. Is that the same case in here, or am I pushing 5 almost people in a room together, or are you clothed in this kind of chamber?
Yeah, so the advantage to what we do is that we have, our chambers are featured in the center of our centers, and people go in gym attire, right? Because the design is it's a thermogenic shock, and you're looking to try to drop skin temperature from head to toe. You can do that with a t-shirt on. Most of our men go in shirtless. Most of our women go in joggers or
sports bra or something.
Sports bra. But there's no need to get completely nude in these things. One of the reasons that the nitrogen products do that is because you don't get enough temperature in the upper part of the body, and so you need as much skin exposure as you can possibly get to try to get a therapeutic effect, right? So if you go on our website and look at it, you'll see pictures of people. They go in groups. We do team sessions. They're going 5 at a time. They listen to music while you're inside the chamber, and they're moving around, and so it's more of a community-based kind of wellness and alternative health center than it is sort of treating in the privacy of a back room somewhere. Which, I've been in every product that's out there. To me, that gets a little creepy anyway. We like the system and the model that we have moving forward.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. And so for me, I think I would much rather do a community cold chamber than a community sauna like I do, right?
Uh-huh.
5 guys in the hot sauna gets a little
Yeah.
uncomfortable from time to time. But
Yeah, and the sauna's 35 to 40 minutes, right? So if you're going in and you're lining up in a group, you're doing 3 minutes of cold therapy, and
right,
you're listening to music and you're stretching, and there's plenty of room in there, and you're moving around. It goes by so quickly, and then you're out and you're on the floor and you're rewarming and you're going to another therapeutic modality for recovery. So it works very well in our centers.
right.
And we do far infrared sauna, but we limit the number of people that are in there at a time.
Now, I do a lot of times, and only because of convenience, I do my cryo, then my workout, or my cryo, then my massage. Is that the proper technique?
Yeah, some do it, they can do it either way. So the reality of what whole body cryotherapy does is it's not going to freeze your joints. Like you wouldn't get in an ice bath before you did your workout because you'd have limitation of range of motion in your joints from permeation of water into the joints. Cold therapy actually at a thermogenic shock level helps with circulation and reduces inflammation almost immediately. So you're going to feel a better range of motion and you can get right into a really good workout. It also elevates energy levels. And so it's very good to do it before. But then, like in all the pro sports teams, and we're in, almost 24 professional sports training rooms with our chambers, they'll do a shorter protocol before, and then they'll come back after for the inflammation process, right? For the recovery process.
Right. Fantastic. Awesome stuff. So we touched on this a little bit, but let's dive a little deeper. Your father was in Prague. He saw this, came back. How did you take the transition from big pharma, and thank you for leaving that industry, and coming to a holistic medical approach, right? I mean, this is wildly different business. And from the sounds of it, you quit a cush job to be your own boss, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that story and how you transitioned from big pharma into business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's natural to, at some point in a career when you're working in, big corporate, big corporate America, that you're interested in doing something that you can drive sort of the ship and recognize the fruits of your own labor. I think a lot of people do that at some point. It was just really interesting to me to try to bring in a new, therapeutic concept that could help people recover. I believed in the science from day one, still do. We've done 4 million treatments nationwide in 10 years and have never had an incident, and have great testimonials in terms of recovery. The challenges that I didn't think so much about were really just the whole business landscape, starting an industry, pivoting when it comes to equipment. There are a lot of challenges in there. And then COVID, right? COVID hits and retail service centers get crushed. Right. Because people aren't going out as much and we're shut down and we're.
So did you not get essential services as a cryotherapy sauna?
Yeah, I think the first round there was a lot of confusion in the initial shutdown. So we shut down like every other business in the community, and then we reopened and ran at 25% capacity, which hurts the business significantly. And then when a second round of shutdowns came, we decided to deem ourselves essential and stay open, and nobody challenged that. Right. But the reality is we operated for a year at 25 to 40% capacity, and that was human nature. People weren't going out as much. We were setting appointments. We were running COVID protocols to be separate people and clean after every touch. So that was really destructive to a small business in the retail services industry.
Absolutely. I've been through very similar things, and we took advantage of the EIDL money from the SBA, which helped tremendously. And if you're a business owner and you haven't applied for that program yet, I think there's still spots available. Get on that, the COVID relief fund to help.
Yeah, we did the same, and then recently they just announced that there's an extension on the amount that you can apply for on that as well.
Correct. I'm currently in that process as well. Right.
Yeah, us too.
Yeah, it's a longer process for sure, but it's a fantastic program that they put together to help businesses get through this challenging time. And the EIDL money that we got in the beginning, absolutely helped us keep our doors open and keep our employees paid and keep moving forward. And the second round is really going to help us grow, right? So and get back to where we were pre-COVID is the plan. So I do have to say, I'm not a huge fan of government programs, but this is one that has been put together. It seems like it's been run pretty well. The PPP forgiveness was a fantastic program that helped us out a lot. And so I hope, if you're a small business, really be on the pulse of all of these things, because it can be the difference in keeping your doors open, not keeping your doors open. So I think it's a shame that they shut down cryo, because there's huge benefits on cryotherapy and exercise in general on the immune system, right?
No doubt, no doubt.
So I do cryotherapy, and I've had COVID twice. Luckily for me, my symptoms were very, very mild, to the point that if my wife hadn't had it, I wouldn't have known that I had it anyway. So,
well, we did. We when we reopened the first time, we did a immunity challenge, because we believe, I've had COVID in my house 3 times over the last year and a half with my kid. Myself, I've had it, and all of us had almost no symptoms. So, very short-lived and very quick recoveries. And that's not to say that it's not very serious for others, but we believe in really solid immune system health. And the only way to really accomplish that is to reduce systemic inflammation.
Absolutely. And I believe that my symptoms and my use of cryotherapy helped me tremendously in that experience. So
yeah, I would bet on that. The problem is there's no clinical to support it right now, but I would agree with you.
Yeah, and I believe in science. I absolutely do. I don't believe in big company science, but I do believe in science. And if you're thinking about using cryotherapy and you're looking at the science, I would just say, go on Groupon, find a local cryotherapist, and just go and check it out and try it. And I think, the first treatment, you're going to be a little confused when you leave. Like, you're not understanding what you just did, and your body's like in a little bit of shock. But after 2 or 3 treatments, if you have joint pain, anything, it helps with my eczema. It helps with all kinds of weird stuff. And for the price of memberships, I think it's worth it. I think almost every person in the country could benefit from using cryotherapy. So.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is that, we live in a very thermoregulated environment, right? So we live at 75 degrees, right? If it's too hot, we hit the air. If it's too cold, we hit the heat. And the body is designed to be exposed to extreme temperatures, both heat and cold, which then releases cold or heat shock proteins. And those are very good for the immune system, and they're very good for stimulating, repair and recovery in the body. And so we just have gotten away from doing those things. It's awesome to just cold shock your body, 3 times a week for 3 minutes each, right? It takes 9 minutes a week to really live very healthy. And then that helps, supplement what you're doing from a workout standpoint and a dietary standpoint. And if you look at all the statistics around COVID, the majority of the cases that were most significant had to do with high risk factors.
Right.
And so we should all be thinking about living healthier.
Yes, absolutely. And what you're talking about there specifically, we haven't breached this at all. And I talk about this pretty regularly, because my side hobby is I teach little kids boxing, right? And my boys and girls, they're not bullies in school. They don't do those kinds of things. And I think because we exercise fight or flight on a regular basis, it helps them with their emotions, and they don't latch out of their teachers anymore. And I literally have teachers come to me on a regular basis say, "What did you do to this kid? He completely transformed." Like, well, really, we're just exercising his fight or flight. He gets to experience that. So whenever he's confronted at school, he's okay with it, or she's okay with it, right? Yeah. And there's a part of cryotherapy that exercises that fight or flight response that I feel is so important that we should be exercising in today's world with, and I'm absolutely pro the anti-bully movement and all of those things that we've done, but we've removed so much adversity from our lives that people don't practice it. So when it does show, we have these road rage issues and things like that. So, it's a weird thing that we've done in our society. I love it. I like that people can be free and do all this stuff, but I don't like that we have these road rage incidences and people don't know how to. They just don't have the skills to deal with any kind of adversity and they latch out and those kinds of things. So cryotherapy also exercises that same primal set of skills that we kind of lose in a modern society.
There's a very powerful cold shock protein called norepinephrine, which people don't probably know enough about, and they should look it up. It's a well, it's an anti-inflammatory, but it's also a neurotransmitter. And so when you are cold shocked and you release significant amounts of norepinephrine, it's very good when that gets into the bloodstream to help with anti-inflammation. But it also elevates, this is the whole fight or flight piece, where it elevates cognition, it elevates mood and energy levels. And so it's really good in the brain. I think that it's extremely positive for people that have neurodegenerative conditions, traumatic brain injury and the CTEs and the PTSDs. And there are some studies that are starting to look at that in Europe as well. But yeah, I mean, the more norepinephrine that you can release in the body on a regular basis, the better.
And my advice to everybody, regardless of it, specifically for business owners that are highly stressed, if you're looking for a quick way to relieve some stress, get into a different mindset, cryotherapy is a wildly affordable way to do it. It's pretty fun. And I've never walked out of a cryotherapy session feeling the way I did when I walked in. Yeah. Right. And you start, it's almost like, for an adult, it's almost the feeling now of like when I was in my 20s and we're getting ready to go out to the bar that night and have a good time. Right. You get almost that same kind of endorphin dump from going to your cryo or going to the gym or those kinds of things. But wildly affordable, super duper fast to do. Everybody can fit it into their schedule if you have a place near you is the biggest challenge in today's environment, I think. Right?
Yeah, I would agree.
So fantastic. I love all the science and tech behind cryotherapy, but let's get into the show a little bit deeper. And the question I really like to ask a lot of folks, and we've touched on this a little bit, is what tip or trick do you have? And I'm gonna take away cryotherapy from you as your answer to help you overcome adversity, either in business or your personal life.
Yeah, well, certainly over the last 10 years, there's been a ton of adversity because I didn't project the many layers of building an industry and a brand. I tend to, from a business standpoint, I'm thinking, 4 or 5 steps ahead much more now. Like, so what's this going to look like in 5 years? And like to try to dive into clinical and analytics. Clinical supports the product or the services that we're delivering. The analytics around it have to do with the performance of a center as a business, right? And so how do we reach more people? How do we educate more people? How do we capitalize on the volume of people that we do have? And that's, there's a pricing model, there's a customer service and loyalty model. And so I just like to get very deep into the analytics behind the business. When things seem like they're a little bit more stressful and you can't overcome them. And certainly the last 18 months have created an urgency around that, right? We had to reevaluate our model a little bit and understand we've got a loyal customer base. We need to still acquire new customers. How do we do those things successfully in today's environment? And that tends to really relieve some of the stress, not all of it, because things don't always work the way you plan. But from a planning and a business analytics standpoint, I tend to try to go that direction.
Right. So I talk about faith a lot in business and having faith and and moving forward. And, I think an article was just published. Literally faith and tenacity, right, is overcoming adversity. So I think that's fantastic. And where you found faith is in knowing your numbers, right, which is huge. And I know that when I've been in times of struggle, I definitely go over my checkbook a lot more than I do when I'm not in times of adversity, right? So when I'm in those struggling times, I really study my checkbook. Probably, I have a half hour every day blocked out for checkbook review. And I really study it in those times of adversity. I might add an hour to that so I can really look at, what's the next week, what's the next month go for. And I find comfort in that math and knowing those numbers a lot as well when I'm really struggling. It gives me the ease. Okay, I have a plan of how I'm going to move forward. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a little scary sometimes because I'm expecting this check on this day and that bill's due the next day. But finding faith in knowing your numbers, I think, is something that people don't talk about very much. And not just your numbers on your checkbook, but your analytics on your website. How am I finding new customers? What's my social media look like? Are enough people educated on my product in this marketplace? Are all I feel like the numbers that you're talking about, those analytics, right? And they're just really
Yeah.
studying those because you find faith in those numbers.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I sort of try to break it down into three categories. It's people, it's process, right? So let me start with the people part. That's both your customers and your employees, right?
Correct.
So you got to have the right people to make a model work. You have to have the right process in place so to make that work. And the third P, which I forget right now, will come to
Product.
Well, product is really important as well. Yeah.
Right.
And that might have been what I was thinking, but I was thinking back to the PPP, and then all of a sudden I was equating it to what I'm thinking about.
Yeah,
But,
Marcus Lemonis, right, who's one of my idols in life. I watch anytime I get to absorb any Marcus Lemonis content I do, he talks about the PPP all the time. It's people, product, and people, process, and product.
Yeah.
And it's so important. And I've seen a lot of managers over the years, and I'm in a couple leadership groups that I think are humorous, and they talk about the people. And what you said was hit the nail on the head. Your people is your employees and your customers, right? It's not one or the other. It's both. It's not an or situation. It's an and situation, right? And really looking at your staff, and I'm finally to the point where I look at my staff first over my customers, because they're the ones managing my customer base, right? If I can make them happy, the theory is that they're making the clients happy, right? So at some point in your career, you go from a customer-centric mindset to an employee-centric mindset, and it's a challenge to do. But at all times, you have to know how to manage your staff and have that customer people part as well. And having the right customers is huge, right? Having the wrong customers can really be draining, right?
Yeah.
If you constantly have to re-educate them, if they don't have faith in the product, then that's a giant problem, right?
So no doubt. I'll add a fourth P for you, because what I was thinking was passion as well. And
yes.
It has to come across through your employees, to your customers, in your process, through corporate, that you're passionate about what you're doing. And fortunately for us, we're in a situation where every day, as you mentioned, people come in and leave in a different mood and feel better and have less pain. And for us, the passion part is fairly simple. So we include that sort of in our model. That makes a lot of sense in terms of what we do as an organization.
Absolutely. And every time you hear a story of somebody, because very similar to gyms and yoga and mindset, you're literally changing people's lives sometimes, right? You're taking a difficult thing that they were struggling with and making it easier, or in sometimes curing them of that, right? Regardless of the science, placebo effect, whatever it is, people are healing with this process, right? Absolutely. And I know for me, I feel so much better after cryo treatment, right? It's just a significant difference in a lot of parts of my life, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
I very much enjoy the process of the whole thing. So on to our last question of the day, and we'll wrap the show up. Is there a piece of technology that you use either in your personal life or your business that has made a significant impact on your life?
Good or bad?
Either way. Yeah, I guess we don't talk about the bad stuff too much, right? There's a ton of bad in tech too. But yeah, either way, you can take it either direction.
So I'm technology, obviously. So staying connected is extremely important. We've got 18 franchisees. We have 5 corporate centers. We're doing sales. We have a lot of high profile clients. So social media, influencers in the social media space, networking, and just technology in general is the one way to really stay connected. It can be good and bad. The social media part of it, I don't like seeing the way things have moved. The influencer market's a great example, right? Anybody can be an influencer if they can gather the right amount of following, and then to profit off of those things, it just gets weird for me. I mean, I guess I'm a generation ahead of all of that. I sort of understand it, but I also don't understand the connectivity for the younger generation on social media. So it's good and bad, but from a business standpoint, it's really the only way to get the awareness and the exposure out that you really need.
Right. have you found a specific influencer marketplace that you like to use that has been a home run for you? Or is it really just a daily grind, hustling and trolling through Instagram and looking for people that align with your product or service?
It's a little of the latter. I mean, it's more focusing on the sports and fitness and recovery parts of the industry. To our benefit now, everything that's sports or athletic training related now include recovery,
Right.
which 10 years ago that wasn't the case. But regen and recovery are really important, and so we look for folks in that space that also like our product and want to use our products because they see the benefits as well. So it's a really easy connection in terms of the relationship. Um, and that's the avenue that we use really most in the communities when we open a new location to really start the awareness.
Right. And you obviously are in a fairly new industry, right? 15-year-old industry at the oldest in the country, right? And you founded in 2009, so it's 12 years. And there's two competing different kinds of technology in there. What is your opinion on? I tend to believe that rising tides rises all ships, right? I like that philosophy in life. Is that the philosophy you take when you're talking to somebody that says, no, I'm going to open the nitrous? Or are you just saying, hey, you shouldn't do that, and really try to educate them through the difference and steer them away from there?
Look, the reality is a growing industry typically benefits everybody in the industry for the most part. I would say that's 70% true in this industry, and 30% have opened their businesses, maybe not marketed properly, maybe not educated properly, had issues with their operators, created some potential, dangerous situations with the equipment. And so that's a sort of a black eye on the industry. On the other side of it, when people are going like yourself that have good experiences at centers, even using nitrogen equipment, it expands awareness and grows the industry. So if someone were to ask me, I would give them in my opinion, the benefits of safety, capacity to treat and profitability, and just, not wanting to deal with nitrogen gas. I mean, I wouldn't want to treat anybody with gas on the whole body. But having said that, I also, understand that there are a lot of centers out there that are doing that and doing it successfully and safely as well.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a little bit different. It seems like it should be much further along in a 10-year period, but it was really sort of, taking baby steps through the first 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And so really the explosion in the market's probably been since 2016 or 17.
Well, even when for the business owners out there that are considering, bringing a new product to market, right? This equipment is expensive for people to purchase. One of the things that you're going to have to overcome is convincing the banks to loan the money on the equipment at a profitable rate, and you're going to have to explain that process to them, right? And that's not simple process to do when you're first starting out, right? And you got a brand new product, and you're saying, hey, bank, I need $100,000 to buy this piece of equipment because I'm going to start this brand new, not tested industry in the United States, right? So that's a huge challenge to do. You've got that all figured out, but it's taken some time to get there, I'm sure. So for the business owners that are really considering bringing a new product to market, those are some of the hurdles that you need to think about when you're doing a SWOT analysis, is a strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Those are some of the things that you really have to, really dig down on those threats and the weaknesses. And one of the weaknesses is expensive equipment, right? Yeah. And convincing the bank, how's the bank going to get their money back if they loan it out on this particular product, right? So something huge to think about whenever you're doing these things. Kevin's already figured it out for his business. But if somebody's thinking about doing, I don't know what that next business is going to be, right? It could be Musk building spaceships or, building cryotherapy chambers in the United States. So, and everything in between. Kevin, thank you for hanging out with us today. I very much appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show. If you can hang out just for a minute, and we'll be back and we can chit chat after the recording's over.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for joining us today on the show. If you want to join my text line community, my number is 314-370-2871. If you text that number, just say hi, ask me any question. I'll do my best to answer it open and honestly. I'll never try to sell you anything on that text line. I'll just send you tips and tricks and some information. Every now and then I'll send you some crypto news because crypto is one of my extra hobbies. That's it for today, folks. get to work.